Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Bells will be ringing, the sad, sad news. Oh, what a Christmas to have the blues. My baby's gone, I have no friends who wish me greetings once again. Choirs will be singing Silent Night, Christmas carol by candlelight. Please come home for Christmas. Please come home for Christmas. If not for Christmas.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Geopolitics with Ghost. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, aka the Ghost of Bass Patrick Henry. Today is December 2nd, 2025, as I try to get this volume on this turned down and off. Yeah, so obviously Christmas season started, so I thought we'd start off. I thought we'd get us into the mood, into the spirit, right? How's everyone doing today? Yes, this is my wife's doing. I thought maybe we'd do no background today. We'd just do the real background. People ask if this is a green screen. This is not a green screen. This is my living room and my wife's decorating, which I can't take credit for. But yeah, we have a lot of, gosh, man, all the developments around the world are very encouraging and very timely. Builds off of everything we talked about last week. We'll probably try to hit a little bit of everything today. We kind of have a little bit of movement on every storyline. We'll probably go back to the Middle East more because we haven't been in the Middle East much the past, since 2 weeks ago. But let's start today with Venezuela, because I think that's the one that's really pressing. That's pressing at the top of everyone's mind right now, even though there's a lot of other really important stuff happening. And we went over this on Badlands Daily, but it's worth doing again. We're going to go ahead and play the video that President Trump posted. Well, first of all, we had this headline from Axios. Where did it go? What Trump said in a 150-post middle-of-the-night Truth Social barrage. So Trump was just like shit-posting like a mad lad last night. 158 posts from 9 p.m. Monday to 12 a.m. Tuesday. I mean, it was a shit-post on Monday. I don't blame him. Sometimes you just get in the mood. But one of the posts he made, wait a minute, another post which included a clip of Trump's cameo in Home Alone 2 said, "Christmas is officially great again." Love that. But one of the other posts that he made was this one about Nicolas Maduro. He posted it twice. He posted it. This is like the original post. So see, it's just, there's no caption or anything. It's just the video, and we'll read the video in a second. But then he reposted it. He reposted that post with a JPEG, like a screenshot of Paul White Gold Eagle. It says, "Breaking: Venezuelan President Maduro," I think he means Maduro, "publicly surrendered to President Trump." I mean, it's interesting. The U is missing, but we'll let somebody else decode that misspelling. All right, so let's play this video. It's in Spanish. We'll go ahead and silence it, and I'll just read the translation. He's talking about the campaign on Aragua's train. He says, "I have a very clear position about that." I think when he says Aragua train, he's referring to Tren de Aragua. And it means, because so Tren de Aragua means Aragua Train. So when he says Aragua Train, it's what he's referring to. He says, I have a very clear position about that. I tell President Donald Trump with respect, ask for reports from the last 4 years of FBI and DEA. And it probably is going to be way more than that, more like 6 or 7 years, but from the offices in Colombia, so that you can see President Trump, who financed it and moved to the famous train of Aragua, the cartel. Those people took him to Colombia. Those people who took him in the United States, who brought him in, asked for veridical reports so they know the truth. We defeated, dismembered, and ended with this group of violent criminals who intended to be used from Colombia with deep ties against the former Biden administration in order to bring terrorism into Venezuela. If there is anything that can be said about terrorism on Aragua's on the Tren de Aragua issue, an extinct one. Let's see, on the Tren de Aragua issue, an extinct one. It was because they wanted to attack cities around the country, and we avoided them. Look. Intelligently with action, President Trump asked for those reports so you can see I tell you sincerely and respectfully. So you will be able to know the truth about, there's some translation, rough translation here, but I think he says you will be able to know the truth about the famous train of Aragua, Tren de Aragua. So what Maduro is saying here, he says they are our migrants are not criminals. They're not bad people. They were immigrants as a result from sanctions. Good people who and hardworking people, and in Venezuela we welcome as productive forces with a loving hug. Welcome back to the homeland. Family reunion. Welcome everyone. Yeah. So what Maduro is saying there is he's saying that Tren de Aragua is financed by like the State Department, by the NGOs, by USAID, by the CIA, by fill in the blank, right? It's funded by DC. And that's also what Gustave Petro was saying during his UN speech a month or two ago in New York. And Maduro, as I noted on Badlands Daily this morning, is referring to Alex Saab, the guy who quote unquote defected from Venezuela back during Trump's first term in 2018, went over and officially became an informant. I think technically he was an informant for the DEA from 2016 until 2019. That's what it was saying. But what ends up happening with let me pull up the mind map. What ends up happening with Alex Saab is that he's working with the Trump administration. He's doing it, according to his lawyer later, says he was doing it entirely with the blessing of Maduro and the Venezuelan government, which is proven to be true because he is sent back home in 2023 and then in 2024 becomes appointed as a top official in Maduro's government. But as it explains here, he is, I think he begins cooperating as an active source from 2018 until 2021. That's what it was, 2018 to 2021. So the second half of Trump's presidency. And then once, he is arrested in Cape Verde, which in June of 2020. That is in Africa. He's then extradited to Miami in October of 2020. I think it's October of 2020. And then, what does this say? One of those is for Glencore, and the other one is a bribery case. Yeah, so basically in 2021, once Biden comes in, the Biden admin just throws the book at Alex Saab, and he is put in prison and then eventually exchanged for a number of Maria Corina Machado's friends who were arrested by Maduro. They are sent back to the United States in 2023. Alex Saab is pardoned and sent back, or I don't know if he's pardoned, but he's at least sent to Colombia, where he's not serving a prison sentence anymore. And again, the critical role that he plays, aside from informing on Trump, is being an informant for the Trump administration, is that he is connected. He's the DEA source in PDVSA. So not only is he giving the details about the cartels and how they operate to the DEA, he's also giving the DOJ and the FBI details. And I assume when I say that, I'm referring to like the good twin, right? If there is one. Because the bad twin obviously already knows how all this stuff works. But giving the good twin the goods on how the corporate side of the cartel operates. And that was, Venezuela, Maduro's contribution, as I see it, to the whole situation. And then when Trump posts that video that we just played, that really does, I think, highlight the fact that this is kayfabe and that we are looking at kayfabe here, and that Trump and Maduro are actually working together. And then I encourage people to go listen to Badlands Daily when Brian and I were talking about Honduras, and there's a template in Honduras. The president of Honduras was doing all the things that Maduro and Petro are doing now, arresting cartel members, extraditing them to the United States. He's then framed up by the government. This is the president as a criminal. He's charged with a bunch of crimes in the U.S., and then he's pardoned by Trump. So I think that there's just a lot of things that are appearing, reruns and this kabuki theater is all kind of coming to a head. So Trump is doing a cabinet meeting right now, which we're not going to listen to. Badlands is airing that right now if you want to go listen to that. But I am noticing, I've seen a few clips so far when the show was starting, and here's one that's kind of interesting. This is the all sorts of conspiracy theories about this, but the headline is, or the caption is, Trump appears to doze off and fall asleep several times while Marco Rubio rambles and monologues. Trump's right hand is also bandaged. So let's listen to this.
And every single thing he has done in our foreign policy has been driven by the American people in mind. And I can go down the list. Why has he focused on mass migration? It's very simple, because no country is safe if you can just walk in without us knowing who you are into your country. We've seen the destruction that's wreaking, not just in our own country, but the impact that it's having in Europe and in many other parts of the world. You talk about trade deals and the trade situation has been involved in. People, all this reporting on it. It's very simple. The president views the last 40 years as an era of which American workers and American farmers have been ripped off. They've been ripped off, and what he's saying is we want to have a trade with the world, but it has to be a trade in which American businesses and American workers and the products they make and what American farmers grow and produce has a fair shot to be sold around the world. On issue after issue, that's been the case. You talk about foreign aid reforms. This is not our money. This is taxpayer money. When the president has said, we're going to do foreign aid, but we're going to do foreign aid for countries that are aligned with the United States and in a way that doesn't waste the taxpayers' money. Mr. President, you deserve tremendous credit for that. Many of us, the vice president, by the way, I want to acknowledge, has played an extraordinary role in our foreign policy, and he too has been a witness to all of this as it's been occurring, and he's been a big part of it as well. You talk about NATO. The president's not against NATO. He went to NATO and basically said, look, you guys, we're paying all the money, and he got them to do the 5% commitment, which everybody said was never going to happen. It was impossible. Everything this president does is driven by the American people. Whether you don't have to agree with the actual move, but understand the motivation. The motivation is always you, the American people, and what's good for you, for your family, for the country, and for our economy. But the president is also committed to peace in a way that all of us have seen. He achieved in Gaza, and he does it, by the way, not just because he hates war and he thinks wars are a waste of money and lives, but because he's the only leader in the world that can. No other leader in the world could have pulled off what happened in Gaza. And I can tell you, I can't get into the details. The vice president knows what I'm talking about. That deal doesn't happen without the president's direct interaction with the leaders that were involved in this decision making. And everyone said that deal couldn't hold. And then the president shepherded through the United Nations of all places to get a global coalition of countries to line up behind the peace deal, behind the border peace. And it's still, every day is a challenge, but it's been driven personally by the president. It's the reason why we're involved in this whole Ukraine-Russia conflict. That's not our war. It's not the president's war. This war started, it never would have happened if you'd been president. But this war is going on, and the president is trying to end it, not because, listen, we got a million things to focus on in the world as a country, but he's the only leader in the world that can help end it. And that's why that's why even as we speak to you now, Steve Wyckoff is in Moscow trying to find a way to end this war, to save lives of 9,000 people, Mr. President, as you know, are dying every week. More people are dying a week in that war than have died in the entirety of the U.S.'s involvement in Afghanistan or Iraq. Just think about that, how bloody and destructive it is. The president's taken on this issue of Sudan personally, not send out deputies to do it. Again, far away from the United States, because he's the only leader in the world that can bring it about to an end, not to mention all the other peace deals, very dangerous ones like India and Pakistan, or Cambodia and Thailand. And so on all these things, Mr. President, I think you deserve tremendous credit for the transformational aspect of our foreign policy. For the first time in probably 4 decades, the American foreign policy is driven by what is good for America and Americans, whether it makes us safer and stronger and more prosperous. If it is, he's for it. If it doesn't, he's against it. And that sort of clarity is transformational. I close with this, and I know I'm last, so I wanted to be fast, but there was a lot to cover. I do want to say this is the most wonderful and magical time of the year. By that, of course, I'm referring to the college football playoffs. And I just want to say this as a point of personal privilege. And I'm a Florida Gator, but if the University of Miami gets screwed out of the college football playoffs after going 10-2 and beating Notre Dame, the whole thing should be scrapped, and you're going to have to take over it next year.
That's great. Amen. Thank you all very much.
Yeah. Okay. That's, I mean, I think they're probably reading into that a little too much. If you want to think that Trump is pretending to be asleep there, okay. I mean, maybe he is. Maybe he's just sitting there listening to Marco Rubio with his eyes closed. I don't know, but yeah, it was just kind of like filler language from Rubio. Anyway, yeah, we'll dissect whatever comes out of the cabinet meeting and talk about it more on Friday. All right, so let's go to wait a minute. John just posted this from The Storm Has Arrived. Let's listen to this.
Those numbers are going to go up, and I believe that at some point in the not too distant future, you won't even have income tax to pay, because the money we're taking in is so great, it's so enormous that you're not going to have income tax to pay. Whether you get rid of it or just keep it around for fun or have it really low, much lower than it is now, but you won't be paying income tax. We've seen those.
Keep it around for fun. I vote that we keep it around for fun. John says he's skeptical this is actually going to happen. I'm not skeptical. I think this is actually going to happen. And I think it'll be one of the most powerful mechanisms to revitalize the American economy and unleash the middle class, is to stop taking away 20 to 25%, 20 to 30% of everybody's income. Just give it back to them and let them spend it on whatever they want. And the market will reward us for doing that. All right. So let's go to Europe and go back to Russia, Ukraine, which we spent Friday talking about. I think there's definitely some more developments to discuss. There's this video from Putin, which is from a longer clip, but I like this this little 9-second clip. So let's share that screen and then we'll make it full screen. And I'm going to have to read it because this is in Russian, of course. So I'll read the transcript. It says, "We are not planning to fight Europe. I've said this 100 times already, but if Europe suddenly decides it wants to fight us and starts it, we are ready to fight right now." And that was part of a longer clip where Putin was just making it clear that, FAFO, of course, that's understood. Okay, so right now the big news is Wyckoff is in Russia meeting with Putin, and we see a few clips of that. Let me see if I can pull one up that are floating around. This just started maybe like an hour or two ago, or at least the video started an hour or two ago. Yeah, so like there's videos of their plane landing, and this is being documented like every single like leg of this trip. There's this video of here's Kirill Dmitriev. This is a screenshot from a video, but I believe that's Kirill Dmitriev with Steve Wyckoff and Jared Kushner. Yeah, here's the actual video. Getting the guided tour. What do I need to do to sign up for a guided tour of Moscow with Kirill Dmitriev? Because I 100% would pay top dollar for that. And I think that's something that we should finance with the millions of dollars that John has squirreled away. We should finance Kirill Dmitriev giving us a guided tour of Moscow. Okay, so let's see if we can pull up the Wyckoff Putin clip that I had. All right, here it is.
So pleased to see you.
Okay, so right here on the far side of the table. Kirill Dmitriev on the near side. You got the translator sitting in between Dmitriev and Putin. Translator on their side.
Take pride rightly for they have done for the development of Moscow in recent years.
Okay. All right. Well, and actually, I spoke a little too soon. I think I have a clip from that I actually wanted to get in with the Venezuela segment. Let me pull this up. This is a clip with Colonel McGregor, kind of just laying out what potentially might happen with Venezuela, just ostensibly the optics and how everything is laid out right now. And so let me pull up that exact spot. I think it was 14 and a half.
Criminality, and it hasn't really worked out. It hasn't happened.
Well, his tariffs have caused inflation and joblessness. These statistics are right there on the front page of the newspapers. But militarily, how unwise is it? 10,000 troops in Puerto Rico waiting to do what? To storm the beaches of Venezuela as if it were Vietnam?
Well, we haven't seen the plans. All right. So we don't know what the operational plans are, but it looks as though, and it's about 17,000 troops in Puerto Rico, by the way.
Wow.
Lost track of how many thousands of Marines are floating offshore. But it looks as though the idea is that there would be some sort of internal coup. How this is going to be staged and executed is anybody's guess, but the idea is that you get Mrs. Machado installed, and then you seize things along the coast, which can easily be done by the Navy and the Marines, and then you bring in large numbers of Army infantry to operate as a quote-unquote stabilization force. Now, we don't know what the underlying assumptions are, and these are very dangerous. Your assumptions drive everything, and there have to be some assumptions that say there are enough people unhappy with Maduro that they will support the armed coup against Maduro. Who knows? I don't know what the numbers are. That's hard to buy into. But I do know something that has happened recently, and that is that the president has just announced that he wants to talk directly to Maduro. And it leads you to ask the question, all right, has somebody finally explained to the president that the border with Colombia is wide open? There are thousands of Colombian paramilitaries willing to come over. And even though they've had their differences with the Venezuelans, they would easily. He's assembled all this military power. Nobody came in and probably briefed him in detail on the.
Yeah, sorry guys, I don't know what happened there. I don't know why the B747. Pay attention to the situation at hand. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Sorry about that, guys. The thing, it jumped to a different tab. But anyway, so I was listening to it, but I don't know if y'all probably couldn't hear it. But basically, he was just laying out that Maduro
is
going to be
with
offered
Venezuela, which is
potentially $50 million to walk away from everything. Okay, so let's now go to back to Ukraine and see what's happening with theirs. So yeah, look, sounds like we have 17,000 Marines is what they're saying, 10,000 in Puerto Rico, but McGregor says it's actually 17,000. Okay, that's an interesting number. Okay, so from Barack Ravid, I'm sorry, this is the one from November 19th. We want his latest and greatest, which is right here. Wyckoff and Kushner meet Putin to discuss Ukraine peace plan. President Trump's advisors, Steve Wyckoff and Jared Kushner, are meeting Russian President Vladimir Putin at the Kremlin to try to convince him to support the updated U.S. peace plan for Ukraine. The meeting in Moscow comes after 2 weeks of intense diplomacy around Trump's plan, including 2 rounds of negotiations between the U.S. and Ukraine. Putin has said Trump's plan could be the basis for negotiations, but suggested he's unwilling to shift his hardline positions. This is the 6th Wyckoff meeting with Putin in Russia, but the first in-person meeting between Putin and Trump's team since the Alaska summit in August. It's also the first time Kushner has joined talks with Putin. Wyckoff and Kushner are expected to meet Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky on Wednesday in Europe and brief him on the talks with Putin, according to 2 sources with knowledge. The U.S. envoys were expected to present Putin with the revised U.S. peace plan, which was whittled from 28 points down to 19 during talks with the Ukrainians. That's the exact number that McGregor cited the other day, like a week ago. The U.S. envoys, Wyckoff, Kushner, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with the Ukrainian delegation headed by Zelensky's national security advisor, Rustam Umerov, on Sunday in Miami. Those negotiations focused on where the de facto border with Russia would be drawn under the peace deal. Putin insists Russia won't stop the war until it controls the entire Donbass region in eastern Ukraine. The U.S. wants Ukraine to hand over territory there to convince Putin to make peace, and that it would be a painful and politically explosive concession. Zelensky said Ukraine's top general briefed the Americans on the real situation at the front and discussed implementing various steps at the front in the event of a ceasefire. He also said the 19-point plan was further revised during the Miami talks. Wyckoff held 2 additional meetings with Umerov on Sunday evening and Monday morning before heading to Moscow. Zelensky and French President Emmanuel Macron also held a call with Wyckoff during Umerov during Zelensky's visit to Paris on Monday. After his meeting with Zelensky, Macron spoke to Trump about a path forward for the peace process. Macron stressed the importance of the security guarantees required for Ukraine and our determination to work on them together with the U.S., a French official said. In the latest, while Kushner and Wyckoff were preparing to meet Putin in Moscow, Zelensky met with his negotiating team in Dublin. The Ukrainian president said they discussed things that cannot be said over the phone. All right, here's Steve Bannon, 3 minutes from Bannon on Marco Rubio in that meeting with Zelensky.
You got Venezuela. President Trump has given an ultimatum to Maduro. A lot of people are saying, hey, can we give him ultimatum? Can we give the same ultimatum to the governor of Colorado to say, hey, you either cough up Tina Peters from prison, or we're going to send the 82nd Airborne in to collect her? I mean, people, look, it's this trade-off between international affairs, global affairs. Understand he's trying to stop the Third World War, but I didn't like what I was hearing out of these negotiations, particularly Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio came out and said, and on video said, hey, our number one thing to the Ukrainian people is to make sure that never again do you have wars. Yo, bro, note to Marco Rubio, they've been fighting wars over there for 5,000 years, and it ain't going to stop. But we can't, this is my problem. We can't give these over-the-top discussions and then say we're going to give a guarantee. We cannot guarantee the sovereignty of Ukraine. We cannot give a security guarantee for Ukraine. Those people have been fighting for 5,000 years. And particularly when Yermak, who ran the government, is now running and trying to getting an exit. He's either going to go to the front and try to slip out that way or go into exile. The number one guy that ran the government, that you and Poso and Raheem Kassam and everybody would hammer on for years how corrupt, they finally at least kicked down the doors of his house to say, we know you stole at least 100 million. The guy stole tens of billions. That is the government. That's the type of people you're going to be guaranteeing. I just think President Trump has got a domestic agenda and an international. Obviously, the international and domestic are inextricably linked. There's no question about that. And he was handed a mess, and he's trying to stop it and pivot to hemispheric defense. But there are limits about what you can do. Biden and the globalists have screwed this thing so much. Let their globalist partners in Europe figure it out. Those guys started it. President Trump had nothing to do with it. President Trump, they would never happen on his watch. It didn't happen on his watch. As soon as he was gone, they started rolling. He's left with this mess. But to get ourselves even more entangled with the worst people on earth, which are the political class of Ukraine, which is just as corrupt as the, wait for it, political class of NATO, to get involved in that. And for Marco to come out and saying, our priority is to make sure you're never at war again. Dude, grab a history book and just read a couple of pages, man. They've been fighting for 5,000 years. It ain't called the Bloodlands for nothing, right? So, Brad, the president's got such a big domestic agenda, and Karl Rove doesn't need to tell the president about growth. The president knows that. That's why he set up the big, beautiful bill as a supply side tax cut. Look, we didn't love all the bill, right? But the supply side part of it, bringing manufacturing jobs back, because you got one chance. On Trump's watch, we got one chance to return ourselves to being a manufacturing superpower.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, Bannon is always spot on with his assessments. I wanted to show, let's see, we had Turkey, Iran, and Saudi all meeting. So this is okay. So we had on the same day, we had Turkey and Iran. So here's from Iran Observer. We have the Saudis in Tehran and the Turks in Tehran. So all like having separate meetings, but officially. But I don't think it's a stretch to think that maybe that the Turks and the Saudis were also meeting together with the Iranians. Now, the reason I bring this up is we're not going to the Middle East yet, but this ties into what's happening with Russia. This was happening on the 30th, which was on Sunday. So it was being reported on Sunday, which means it could have been, Monday there. And this is all referring to, of course, these attacks that are right here. So the Russian flag tanker attack, and this is what I think CanCon was referencing this morning. I was talking about a separate attack. There were multiple attacks that occurred by Ukraine against various ships off the Turkish coast in the Black Sea. And so this is the one that CanCon must have been referencing from today. Moscow previously accused Kiev of conducting terrorist attacks on commercial vessels in the area. A Russian flag tanker en route to Georgia has been attacked in the Black Sea. Turkish officials have said last week Russian authorities accused Kiev of carrying out drone attacks on commercial vessels in the area. In a statement on Tuesday, Turkey's Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure's General Directorate of Maritime Affairs said the Mid-Volga 2 tanker, which was carrying sunflower oil, that's a weird thing for it to be carrying, reported being attacked around about 80 miles off the country's coast. The ship, which currently has no adverse conditions among its 13 personnel, has issued no request for assistance. The ship is proceeding towards Sinop on its own engines, officials said, without identifying the culprit behind the strike. Later, Russia's Federal Agency for Sea and Inland Water Transport said the vessel had been attacked by a drone and had sustained minor damage. Last week, several explosives-laden sea drones attacked 2 Gambian flag tankers. That's the story that I was talking about this morning. The Kairos and the Varat off Turkey's coast. An assault Ukrainian media sources have described as a joint operation involving the security services of Ukraine and Kiev's navy. In addition, a suspected Ukrainian drone attacked a crude hub on Russia's Black Sea coast belonging to the Caspian Pipeline Consortium, operated by Russia, Kazakhstan, and the U.S. And several Western European nations. So now Ukraine is also attacking pipeline infrastructure on the east coast of the Caspian Sea, which would be like Kazakhstan, or I guess it'd be the east coast of the east coast of the Black Sea? I think we might have a map of that, but yeah, this is like they're attacking their own allies now because the infrastructure is owned by Kazakhstan, Western Europe, and the United States. Like they're involved in this. And the attack on the CPC terminal in Novorossiysk is this one right here. So the sea drone strike halts operations at the global oil terminal. So the Caspian Pipeline Consortium has described the attack on its infrastructure as serving the interests of multiple countries. A major crude hub on Russia's Black Sea coast that handles around 80% of Kazakhstan's oil exports has suspended operations after a mooring at its terminal near Novorossiysk was heavily damaged in an attack in Novorossiysk. I believe that stands for New Russia, if I'm not mistaken. Does that stand for New Russia? Because that's what they used to call Ukraine back in the day. Let me see if I can get this map open. We'll open up the Wikipedia while the map's loading. So Novorussia is a city in Krasnodar Krai, Russia. It is one of the largest ports in the Black Sea. It was one of the few cities designated by the Soviet Union as a hero city. Yeah, and this was a major city during the Khazarian Empire, etc. So let's pull up the Google Maps just to get an exact location of this. Okay. Yeah, so it's the Russian coast here. It's not even Crimea. It's the Russian coast in the eastern part of the Black Sea. Yeah, so eastern part of the Black Sea, not the Azov Sea, which is this area, but the Black Sea. And 80% of the oil that comes out of Kazakhstan runs there. That's interesting. Okay. So going back to the original story, Moscow has denounced the raids as terrorist attacks, with Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov also accusing Ukraine of encroaching on Turkish sovereignty, while Ankara had refrained from assigning blame. Turkish Foreign Ministry spokesman Anku Kasili said the incidents, which took place within our exclusive economic zone of the Black Sea, have posed serious risks to navigation, human life, property, and the environment. So let's see. And then there's the headline about Ukraine infringing on Turkey's sovereignty. And these are definitely terrorist attacks. And here's the other headline about France, as Macron tells Putin, tries to inject himself into this process by meeting with Marco Rubio. Russian intelligence is saying that France wants a direct role in the Ukraine conflict. It says Paris has authorized the use of private military companies to provide assistance to third countries. France is still exploring ways to directly involve itself in the Ukraine conflict. Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service has said, citing a new government decree that authorizes the use of private military companies to assist foreign states engaged in armed conflict. Yeah, so that's just more of the same there from Macron and friends. Now, the reaction, let's kind of talk more about Ukraine now, because the reaction of the other European states, all the cascading crises that are occurring out of Ukraine, as well as the narrative of how all this corruption is coming to a head, here at home in the United States, I think it's all happening hand in hand, right? So here is Ukraine must accept tactical defeat. Former foreign minister. Kiev should sign on to an agreement that no one will like to avoid years of war. Dmitry Kuleba has said Kiev must accept an agreement that no one will like if it wants to avoid many more years of conflict with Russia and a potential complete collapse. Former Ukrainian foreign minister Dmitry Kuleba has said, speaking at a conference in Kiev on Monday. Kuleba, who held his post between 2020 and 2024, said both Ukraine and Russia have the resources to keep the fight going for years, while predicting that the front line will move every year without a political decision. Quote, "We are in a situation where Russia has the ability to destroy us, and we are not strong enough to fully protect ourselves," he said, adding that only a deal that no one will like, which locks in a tactical defeat and strategic victory, could prevent many more years of war or even worse. His comments come amid speculation about the U.S. drafted peace plan for Ukraine. Its initial version reportedly requires Ukraine to relinquish parts of Donbass still under its control, abandon its NATO membership ambitions, and accept limits on the size of its armed forces. According to the reported plan, Ukraine would receive certain security guarantees from the West. And I agree with Bannon. Why do we don't need to secure anything? We don't need to, Yeah, here's the security guarantee is simple. Don't start a fight with Russia, and you won't be utterly and completely destroyed. But it's not our job to go around and protect all these little rink-a-dink countries that get taken over by the CIA and are used as a proxy bludgeoning weapon against China or Russia, whoever it is. Learn to get along with people, and the same goes for Israel. Learn to get along with your neighbors, or don't, and see what happens. But we're not coming to bail you out. So, and then the other really big story, which we talked about on Friday, but I believe there's a little bit more development as this unfolds. Here is Trump talking about, I'm sorry, not this one, this one. Trump names a difficult problem for Ukraine. The corruption situation going on is not helpful, the U.S. president has said. This was during a Air Force One gaggle, I guess they call it, with the press. Corruption remains one of Ukraine's main problems, U.S. President Donald Trump has said, while commenting on prospects of brokering peace between Moscow and Kiev. He made the remarks just hours after Secretary of State Marco Rubio held talks with the Ukrainian delegation in Florida. Speaking to journalists aboard Air Force One, Trump said Ukraine has some difficult problems. When asked to clarify, the president pointed to a corruption scandal or a corruption situation going on, which is not helpful. Trump added that both Russia and Ukraine would like the conflict to end and that there's a good chance we can make a deal. Ukraine was rocked by a major corruption scandal last month involving figures in Vladimir Zelensky's inner circle. The country's Western-backed anti-corruption agencies alleged that Timur Mindich, the Ukrainian leader's former longtime business partner, was the ringleader of a $100 million kickback scheme in the energy sector, which relies heavily on foreign aid. Mindich fled the country to evade arrest, apparently after being tipped off. The scandal led to charges against 7 people and the resignation of 2 government ministers, with opposition MPs claiming that more top officials may also have been involved. Another of Zelensky's close associates, Andrei Yermak, resigned as his chief of staff last week after his apartment was raided by anti-corruption investigators. Although Yermak has not been charged, he said he stepped down to avoid causing problems for Zelensky. Ukraine has faced several major corruption scandals in recent years. In 2023, kickbacks and embezzlement in defense contracts prompted the resignation of Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov. Okay, and let's see. So here's a video of the Russian troops clearing a frontline city. Maybe I'll leave that playing as maybe we'll let that play as I read out this next headline. Okay, so let's go to the headline. Here it is. NATO must be more aggressive towards Russia, according to a top commander, Giuseppe. Okay, Giuseppe Cavo Dragon. Admiral Giuseppe. That's Admiral Giuseppe to you, sir. NATO members should find ways to be more aggressive towards Russia. The U.S.-led bloc's top military chief has said, oh, is that the secret? We just haven't been aggressive enough. We just need to be more aggressive. Here I wasn't operating under the impression that NATO's entire purported existence was to devise ways to be aggressive towards Russia, right? I thought that was the whole point. And no. They've just been playing on easy mode the whole time. They've just been, fighting with one hand tied behind their back. Now they're going to start getting aggressive against Russia. Admiral Giuseppe told the Financial Times in an interview published on Sunday that member states have been weighing options to respond to what he described as Russia's hybrid war. Quote, we are studying everything. Being more aggressive or being more proactive instead of reactive is something that we are thinking about, Dragon said. What's funny about that statement is you will recall when Russia invaded Ukraine in January, February 2022, it was because of the major buildup of troops on the Ukrainian side. And it appeared that Ukraine was provoking Russia. And so Russia responded. So it's funny that you're talking about reacting. Russia was reacting to NATO originally. The commander added that a preemptive strike could be considered a defensive action, though it would be further away from our normal way of thinking and behavior. Yeah, so the normal way of thinking and behavior is what we would just call being intelligent, logical, and moral. And then this new idea, this new path that we're going down, led by Admiral Giuseppe, is to act like a bunch of retarded morons, really. I mean, there's just no other word for what is being proposed here. And I'm sure there are millions of people who are taking this very, very seriously because it's super important that, we devise ways to start a war with Russia. But these people are absolute ass clowns and should just be ridiculously mocked. Look at this guy. Look at this guy's uniform. Look how many medals this clown has. Look at that. That is insane that this guy has that many medals. This guy is one decorated peacock. And he's sitting here saying that we need to start getting more aggressive. Look at this. Look at this clown. Let's zoom in on that. That is embarrassing that you have that many medals, sir. And that you are this big of a retard. We should not be giving retarded people medals like this. But here we are. Corrupt Ukrainian officials is another headline. Could have bagged over $100 billion in Western aid, according to the former prime minister. The figure represents nearly a third of all foreign assistance given to the country. Nikolai Azarov has claimed over $100 billion in Western aid could have ended up in the pockets of corrupt Ukrainian officials. The country's former prime minister, Nikolai Azarov, has claimed, according to Azarov, the U.S. and the EU have pumped a total of $360 billion into Ukraine. Quote, corruption in Ukraine amounts to between 15 and 30% worth of foreign aid being stolen, as Azarov said in a post on Telegram on Monday. The figure is closer to 30% in Ukraine, he added. The former prime minister estimated that between $54 billion and $108 billion could have been lost to corruption. Germany's Kiel Institute for the World Economy puts the total amount of assistance provided to Kiev between January 2022 and August 2025 at some $291 billion. U.S. President Donald Trump has consistently claimed that the U.S. alone committed a $350 billion to Ukraine under his predecessor, Joe Biden. In January 2023, an expose about inflated food procurement contracts of the defense ministry led to the resignation of then Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov. Just months later, Supreme Court Chairman Zvedvolod Kianisyev was arrested for allegedly accepting a $2.7 million bribe. Yeah, so the corruption is pretty out of control. I think we all understand that. Here is Zelensky's aide erupting. This is Andrei Yermak erupting in anger over being sacked. Former chief of staff Andrei Yermak reportedly lashed out at his friend and boss as he exited the government amid a massive corruption scandal. And yeah, that's and then here's another article from him. Zelensky's former top aide disgusted by the lack of support amid corruption probe. Whatever happened to the thickest thieves statement? I quote, I've been desecrated and my dignity hasn't been protected despite having been in Kiev since February 24th, 2022, Yermak said in a text message to the New York Post on Friday, referring to the date when the ongoing armed conflict with Russia began. Quote, I'm disgusted by the filth directed at me and even more disgusted by the lack of support from those who know the truth, he added without specifying further. Yermak denied any wrongdoing and said he had resigned because he did not want to create problems for Zelensky. Quote, I'm going to the front and am prepared for any reprisals, he said, seemingly implying that he would serve on the front line. Yeah, right. He's probably figuring out a way to escape. All right. So I think that that gets us, I think, up to date with Ukraine, Russia. And we'll wait to hear updates from the Wyckoff situation. So now we can talk a little bit more just about Europe in general, and then we'll pivot to Asia. Pentagon cut off communication with Germany, according to the Army chief. U.S. defense contacts have stopped, according to the Bundeswehr's Christian Freuding, as Berlin accelerates a major military buildup. Communications between the Pentagon and the German Defense Ministry have been sharply reduced, the Atlantic has reported, citing German Lieutenant General Christian Freuding. After years of being able to contact American defense officials day and night, Freuding, who has been in charge of the German Defense Ministry's Ukraine unit and has now been named as the next chief of the army, says communications have now been cut off, really cut off. As an example, Freuding recalled that when the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump abruptly halted weapon shipments to Ukraine earlier this year, Berlin received no warning of the move. The officer said he now relies on diplomats in Washington to find somebody in the Pentagon for basic information about U.S. policy. Wow, it really sounds like we are standing tall with Ukraine right now. His comments come as Washington has moved to reduce its direct involvement in the Ukraine conflict and in Europe in general, urging NATO members to play a bigger role in their defense. While Freuding expressed concern over the U.S. winding down activity on the continent, Germany has continued a military buildup, with Berlin expanding weapons production, accelerating procurement programs, and approving long-term borrowing to support militarization. And then I did see that Germany warned of a 2028 war. Here, the Kremlin responded to that. That was a few weeks ago, but that was not what I was looking for. I was actually looking for this one. Moscow responds to NATO preemptive strike threat. And this is, of course, this is coming. Admiral Giuseppe. Like we got to send out Maria Zakharova to go slap around Admiral Giuseppe. It says the bloc needs to consider the risks of a direct confrontation with Russia. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova has said. A recent statement by a NATO admiral that the bloc should consider a preemptive strike against Russia shows that it is seeking escalation and wants to derail the Ukraine peace process. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova has said. Zakharova was responding to an interview Admiral Giuseppe Cavo-Dragone, chair of the NATO Military Committee, gave to the Financial Times over the weekend. According to the admiral, the bloc should become more aggressive and proactive in its dealings with Moscow. He also claimed that a preemptive strike could be considered a defensive action, though it would be further away from our normal way of thinking. In a statement published by the Russian Foreign Ministry on Monday, Zakharova described Drogon's words as an absolutely irresponsible move, indicating the bloc's readiness to further move towards escalation. Anti-Russia hysteria whipped up by NATO members is only stirring up the ongoing confrontation even further, she warned. Dragone's statement also debunked a myth about the purely defensive nature of the military bloc, Zakharova said, adding that NATO, quote, has not been hiding its goals and intentions for a long time. The spokeswoman further accused the bloc of deliberately seeking to disrupt efforts aimed at finding a way out of the Ukraine crisis. Yeah, well said. I agree with all that. All right. It's 3:00, so let's do an ad break.
Yes, Christmas, my dear. It's the time of year to be with the one you love. So won't you tell me you'll never more wrong? Christmas and New Year will find you warm. There'll be no more sorrow, no grief and pain, and
Before skincare went synthetic, people used something simple, something real, tallow. Grass-fed and finished beef tallow is packed with vitamins A, D, E, and K. Nutrients your skin actually knows what to do with. It locks in moisture, restores elasticity, and defends against winter dryness. No water, no preservatives, and no BS. Unlike plant oils or chemical creams, tallow mimics your skin's own structure. Elbows, hands, knees, post-shave, anywhere your skin's crying for real moisture. Perfect for gifting or keeping your own skin soft when the cold hits. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code Badlands for 15% off. Ancient Care, modern truth.
Soft disclosure.
Welcome to Benson Honey Farms, where every jar is pure gold. Benson's Honey is excited to be back on Badlands Media with their latest 2025 honey harvest, straight from their farm in Nebraska. While they've been busy working to improve our state politics from the ground up, they never forgot the importance of sharing the best honey around. As you know, honey isn't just a sweet treat, it's nature's medicine, perfect for alleviating allergies, soothing upset stomachs, or as a delicious natural sweetener for baking. Benson Honey is never heated, ensuring you receive it in its pure, raw form, full of natural goodness. At Benson Honey Farms, quality and purity is top priority, and they've committed to providing the finest honey from hive to home. Join the supportive community and enjoy a special offer. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/honey and use promo code Badlands for 15% off your purchase. Benson Honey Farms, savor the authentic taste of Nebraska and support this America First business. Follow on Facebook at Benson Honey Farms. Stack Sats with River, the Bitcoin-only platform built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Why River? Zero fee recurring buy. Stack Bitcoin effortlessly, hourly, daily, weekly, or monthly. 3.5% Bitcoin interest on cash. FDIC insured. No minimums. Withdraw anytime. Expert US-based support. Human help plus private client services for big buys of over $100,000. Business accounts, boost your balance sheet with Bitcoin and earn 3.8% paid in BTC. Top tier wallet, send, receive, and manage Bitcoins securely. Unmatched security, full reserves custody, multi-sig cold storage, and proof of reserves. Join the Bitcoin revolution at badlandsmedia.tv/river and earn real returns. That's badlandsmedia.tv/river.
Be happy once again. Ooh, there'll be no more sorrow, no grief and pain. And I'll be happy Christmas once again.
All right. So we're back. This is the second hour of Geopolitics with Ghost. Welcome back. December 2nd, 2025. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick. So now we're going to jump into the Middle East, Asia, I think, Western Asia primarily. The Russia-India deal. There's a Russia-India military agreement that the Russian parliament just ratified that we should talk about. Let's see. So the Russian parliament ratifies military cooperation agreement with India. The logistics pact is aimed at streamlining bilateral drills and rescue efforts. Russia's lower house of parliament, the State Duma, has ratified an agreement on military cooperation with India ahead of President Vladimir Putin's visit to the country later this week. The pact was ratified at a plenary session of the State Duma on Tuesday. The treaty, which is aimed at streamlining bilateral armed forces drills, rescue, and humanitarian efforts, will allow Russia and India to legally deploy troops and equipment to each other's soil. Putin will be making his 10th visit to India on December 4th and 5th. During the trip, his first to the South Asian country since 2021, the Russian president is expected to discuss a range of bilateral issues with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And I think that's actually going to be pretty interesting. We might get like some sovereign alliance memes this week. You never know with Modi. Modi is handsy. He likes to touch and feel. That's just Uncle Modi. So he's the handsiest of all of the sovereign alliance bros. Putin's India visit a major step toward deepening ties, according to the deputy prime minister. Denis Manturov has described the trip as a return to the tradition of annual high-level summits. The upcoming visit of President Putin to India is a major step towards deepening Moscow's partnership with the South Asian nation, according to the deputy PM. Putin is slated to arrive in India on December 4th for a 2-day trip. It will be his 10th visit to India and his first since 2021. So we will keep an eye on that and see what happens. It sounds like the big discussion point are these Su-57 fighters. It says right here, Su-57 fighters high on Putin's agenda for India trip, according to a Kremlin spokesman. Moscow and New Delhi are discussing the joint production of fifth-generation Sukhoi jets. Russian President Vladimir Putin will discuss the production of Su-57 fighter jets with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi during a trip to Delhi this week, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has said. New Delhi has encouraged defense firms from friendly countries, including Russia, to work with domestic arms manufacturers to bolster the Prime Minister's Make in India initiative. The issue of Su-57 certainly will be on the agenda during Putin's upcoming visit to India. Discussing Chabahar Port and Chennai Vladivostok trade route are also on the agenda for Putin's visit to India. The spokesman added. Okay, so we got another fighter jet story. We got fighter jet stories everywhere. Fighter jet stories everywhere. Okay. So now I think we can fully pivot to West Asia, otherwise known as the Middle East. So I think the place to start is probably with, well, no, let's not start with Syria. Let's start with Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia, we have this story, which is a follow-up to stories we've talked about before. So this is from, I believe this was published. It says this is from today, but I don't know if that's just because this is being archived. Just want to make sure that we're reading the latest and greatest. Yeah, so it was published yesterday. Okay. So just want to make sure that we're not reading something that we may have read last week. So MBS tells Trump he wants to join Abraham Accords subject to path for Palestinian state. Well, we've heard this one before. While Trump and his advisors acknowledged the gaps between the Saudis and the Israelis are still wide, the White House told the Saudis it wanted to see some progress on the issue during the Trump MBS meeting. U.S. officials said what he is saying. Trump told reporters during Tuesday's meeting that he'd raised the issue of Saudi Arabia joining the Abraham Accords with the Crown Prince. I think I got a positive response, Trump said. MBS was more nuanced. We want to be part of the Abraham Accords, but we also want to make sure we secure a clear path to a two-state solution. Let's see. And Trump said he and MBS had discussed various paths for Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Quote, we talked about one state, two-state, and that he felt the Saudi leader had a very good feeling toward the Abraham Accords, though he didn't want to use the word commitment. It mentions the F-35 sale. It mentions MBS said he and Trump had discussed Saudi contributions to the reconstruction of Gaza, but stressed that there was no specific dollar amount agreed. It will be a lot. Trump interjected. It is very important for him. Trump also said he and MBS will discuss Saudi Arabia potentially obtaining a civilian nuclear capability, but he said it was not urgent because Saudi Arabia has abundant energy. Yeah. So I mean, this is kind of just like a recap article, but just reminding everyone that this is underlying everything else that is out there. It is absolutely imperative that there is a pathway to Palestinian statehood, a pathway to Palestinian statehood. Otherwise, you're not getting normalization with Saudi Arabia. Okay, so the other stories out of Saudi, we have a Russia-Saudi storyline. Russia and Saudi Arabia sign agreement on visa-free travel. And the TLDR is just that both nations, citizens can travel for 90 days a year, up to 90 days a year without getting a visa, going back and forth. So Russians can go to Saudi, Saudi can go to Russia, Saudis can go to Russia. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, China also signed a similar, the exact same day. This was yesterday. The exact same day, Russia introduces a visa-free entry for Chinese citizens as well. So theirs is only for 30 days, it looks like, but still 30 days without a visa. Just making it easier to move around and travel, while also, maintaining a sovereign national populist mindset. I think that's how you get away from globalism. Okay, so I think that takes us everywhere that we wanted to go. Sorry, it's just as I go back to X to pull up the videos I wanted to see, there's stuff breaking on this cabinet meeting, but we'll talk about it on Friday. Give some time to digest it. Let's see, but this is the video that I was looking for. Stand by for processing. Man, they are not kidding when they... All right. So we mentioned Erdogan. I mentioned Erdogan or Turkey meeting with Iran on the same day that Saudi did. So Turkey, Iran, and Saudi. This is not showing me the videos that I wanted to see, but that's all right. We don't need to see it. But you do have pictures now of these meetings, and the question, here it is. This is what I'm looking for. So people were making a big deal out of this. Like I wanted to show this just so people are seeing what I'm seeing. A lot of questions are being asked, and it's the same question by all these different accounts. Why did Saudi Arabia and Turkey arrive in Tehran at the same time? Iran today is the key holder of all sensitive dossiers in Western Asia. I don't know if that's true or not. From Iraq and Syria to Lebanon and Gaza, from the Red Sea to the Persian Gulf, all directions are in the phase of rapid change. I do agree with that. And so at the time, it's like Iran is hosting Turkey and hosting Saudi Arabia. And I think that axis, those three countries, are incredibly important, because if you go back and you look at, let me pull up ChatGPT, see how quickly we can do this. If we pull up Pepe Escobar's Pipelinistan, which is a 2008, I think, article, he talks about the one thing that could really subvert the globalist plans to like lay out these pipelines the way that like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and George Bush wanted to lay them out. He said the one thing that would really stand in their way was a triangle, like an alliance between Riyadh, Ankara, and Tehran. So if Iran, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia all kind of figured out how to get on the same sheet of music, that could potentially blow up whatever the plans are that the globalists have in the Western, in Western Asia, in the Middle East. And that is exactly what we see, I think, happening right here. Anyway, I thought I could pull up his article, but it's taken the AI too long to find it. Anyway, so we have that now unfolding. At the same time, you have the Turks are being accused of all kinds of things by the Israelis and by others. So before we go there, I think we should just swing into Syria. So here is Axios from Barack Ravid. BBC's Ghosts Everywhere. U.S. alarmed by Israel's Syria strikes. Says the Trump administration is concerned that Israel's repeated strikes inside Syria risk destabilizing the country and undermining Trump's hopes of prosperity. Reload it. And undermining the hopes of an Israeli of an Israel-Syria security agreement. Two senior U.S. officials told Axios, "We are trying to tell Bibi he has to stop this because if he continues, he will self-destruct." End quote. That is the key line that I think we've been talking about for the past year at least. One of those officials said, referring to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu by his nickname, supporting President Ahmed al-Shara's efforts, this is Jelani, efforts to stabilize Syria and encouraging him to engage in the peace process with Israel are key elements of the Trump administration's Middle East strategy. President Trump and his team have repeatedly sided with Syria's government in disputes with Israel, the only country in the region for which that's the case. On Monday, Trump posted on social media or on Truth Social in support of al-Shara and said it was very important that Israel maintain a strong and true dialogue with Syria and that nothing takes place that will interfere with Syria's evolution into a prosperous state. Let's just look at that post I have right here. It says the United States is very satisfied with the results displayed through hard work and determination in the country of Syria. We are doing everything within our power to make sure the government of Syria continues to do what was intended, which is substantial in order to build a true and prosperous country. One of the things that has helped them greatly was my termination of very strong and biting sanctions. I believe this was truly appreciated by Syria, its leadership and its people. It is very important that Israel maintain a strong and true dialogue with Syria and that nothing takes place that will interfere with Syria's evolution into a prosperous state. The new president of Syria, Ahmed al-Shara, is working diligently to make sure good things happen and that both Syria and Israel will have a long and prosperous relationship together. This is a historic opportunity and adds to the success already attained for peace in the Middle East. Now, what's interesting about that is I have those headlines, but I also have, what is it? This one, which has to do, because we're talking about Israel now. So Saudi Arabia, like as we're talking about Syria and what, like we're going to get into what Israel wants to do in Syria or what's happening in Syria here in a second. But as this is happening, here's another headline from the Times of Israel. Saudi Arabia transfers $90 million to the Palestinian Authority amid continued Israeli withholding of funds. Saudi Arabia has transferred a $90 million grant to the Palestinian Authority aimed at allowing the cash-strapped Ramallah to continue operating. Formal notice of the grant was presented to the Palestinian Authority Finance Minister Estefan Salameh by Saudi ambassador to the Palestinians, Prince Mansour bin Khalid, on Monday. The Saudi envoy said in a statement that the grant further demonstrates Riyadh's commitment to supporting the PA and to helping it meet its financial obligations. Now, down here it says Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich has refused to sign off on monthly transfers since May as retribution for the decisions by Western countries to recognize the Palestinian state. Even before that, though, Israel had been withholding millions of dollars each month to offset what it said were the payments that the Palestinian Authority makes to the families of security prisoners and slain attackers. The total amount of funds withheld amounts to several billion dollars, the Palestinian Authority claims. The clearance revenues that Israel is required to collect and transfer to Ramallah each month make up a majority of the Palestinian Authority's budget, and the lack of these funds has meant public employees have gone months without receiving a full paycheck or sometimes any salary at all. Yeah, and I've been talking about this for a long time, that this is a very messed up system where the tax collection, the tax revenue, the tax collection is performed by Israel, and then the Israeli national ministry, or the Israeli finance ministry is the one that actually distributes the tax money, the operating budget to the Palestinian government, and then they disseminate that further. Ramallah sends it to Gaza, whatever, and they've been withholding it since May, so they haven't been getting any money. And now the Saudis are stepping in and giving them money so that they can keep operating. How is this even allowed? I mean, this is just such a joke at this point. This is hubris on parade in like the worst sense of the word. And you can only imagine that this is what they have in store for any country that falls under their control, under their military occupation. Syria is the next country, of course. So it says, so we went and we read the Trump. We read Trump's post. He says, so peace in the Middle East is what Trump is pushing for. I apologize. So now back here, the U.S. officials made clear they think Netanyahu is interfering in very unhelpful ways. He has ordered military action across the border in Syria on several occasions, including in the past few days. Israeli forces conducting a raid less than 10 miles into Syrian territory on Friday came under fire from unknown gunmen after arresting suspected militants, with 6 Israeli soldiers injured, according to the Israeli Defense Forces. While trying to extract its forces, the IDF unleashed airstrikes that killed 13 Syrians, many of them civilians. The raid and airstrikes, which took place beyond the portion of Syrian territory Israel has been occupying since the fall of the Assad regime, enraged the Syrian government and generated calls from inside Syria for retaliation. Quote, the Syrians were going nuts. Their own constituents demanded retaliation because Syrian civilians were killed, a U.S. official said. The U.S. officials told Axios the White House did not receive prior notice of the Israeli operation, and that the Israelis didn't warn Syria through military channels as they have in the past. Israeli officials claimed the suspects were part of a group affiliated with Hamas and Hezbollah and had planned attacks against Israel, and that Israel informed the Syrians through intelligence channels. The friction point, U.S. officials working on Middle East issues have fumed for months at what they see as Netanyahu's shoot first, ask questions later approach in Syria. Quote, Syria doesn't want problems with Israel. This isn't Lebanon, a senior U.S. official said, drawing a distinction between Israel's recent strikes in the two countries. But Bibi is seeing ghosts everywhere. We are trying to tell Bibi he has to stop this because if it continues, he will self-destruct, miss a huge diplomatic opportunity, and turn the new Syrian government into an enemy, the official continued. This isn't the first time such sentiments have bubbled up after Israel's brazen strikes on Damascus in June. A White House official told Axios, Bibi acted like a madman. He bombs everything all the time. This could undermine what Trump is trying to do. Trump's embrace of al-Shara, a former al-Qaeda commander, has worried the Israelis. They were shocked when Trump met the rebel-turned-president last May in Saudi Arabia and uncomfortable with the chumminess between the two during their historic Oval Office meeting this month. The Israelis also objected to Trump's decision to lift U.S. sanctions on Syria. While the Israelis have engaged with U.S. efforts to advance an Israel-Syria security pact, they've done so warily and presented maximalist demands. 2 U.S. officials told Axios that Netanyahu's actions have now partially undermined work on a deal with which Washington hopes will be the first step to Syria joining the Abraham Accords at a later date. Since Friday, U.S. envoy to Syria, Tom Barrack, and other Trump administration officials have held tense conversations with their Israeli counterparts on that topic. U.S. officials held similar talks to try to calm down the Syrians and avoid further escalation. On Monday, Barrack met al-Shara in Damascus. The U.S. officials said it's not clear who holds the Syria file in Israel's government after the resignation of Netanyahu's confidant, Ron Dermer. On Monday, Trump weighed in publicly with a Truth Social post praising al-Shara and cautioning Israel. Trump spoke with Netanyahu shortly after the post, though the Israeli readout said Trump had invited Netanyahu to D.C. and didn't mention Syria. Okay, so here is the Times of Israel article, which is reporting on the same thing, but it just says Trump speaks to Netanyahu, invites him to visit, warns Israel not to interfere in Syria. We don't need to read through the whole article because it is just repeating what was already said before. Here is that historic moment on May. Wait, this is September 29th? This is September 29th. I thought this was May 22nd in Israel, but that is not the hilarious date I thought it was. It says, according to Channel 12 News, Netanyahu is likely to make the trip by the end of this month. The visit would be his fifth since Trump returned to the White House in January. The call came a day after Netanyahu formally requested a pardon, and we're going to go there next, from President Isaac Herzog in his corruption trial without acknowledging guilt, a pardon Trump has personally backed, including in a public exhortation to Herzog in the Knesset in October and a subsequent letter. There was no direct mention of Syria in the Israeli readout of the phone call, and there was no immediate readout from Washington. The Syria issue is expected to be a prime topic of discussion during Netanyahu's visit. Channel 12 reported Trump has been pushing for a security pact between Israel and Syria since Shara's Islamist coalition overthrew longtime ruler Bashar al-Assad a year ago. Okay, and so that kind of sets the table because we have reports now of Israeli government officials threatening potentially like an assassination attempt on Jelani. Them saying that, oh well, you never know what might happen. Maybe you'll get, maybe you will be taken out. So let's see. We have. So funny because it's always I'm used to calling him Jelani, but everyone else is saying Sherrod. That's what I guess they call him now. Okay. So we have Russia. Let's come down here to. So I'm sorry. Let's back up a little bit. I'm just trying to get my bearings here. So today Netanyahu was supposed to speak, I think, at 2:00 local time, or I guess it would be 2:00 our time, Eastern time. He canceled the televised statement. So you're supposed to make a televised statement. This would have been 8 p.m. local time. 8:10 is when this is being reported. It was unclear when the statement will take place tonight, or if it will be delayed into another day. The statement will be about the attempts to pass a law on Haredi enlistment to the IDF and deferments, says the PMO. So as we are gearing up and starting operations from Israel into Damascus, into Syria, they're bombing Beirut, they're bombing southern Syria. You have Naftali Bennett. It says, would-be Prime Minister Bennett denounces Netanyahu's Haredi draft law as deception, quotes Moses saying Torah students must fight during war. In a video message released to the public in response to a planned statement on ultra-Orthodox conscription by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, since postponed, former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett accuses the government of advancing a law that will eliminate any chance of drafting Haredim. Following October 7th, Israelis fought like lions without any differentiation between left and right, religious or secular. And now, following the end of the war, the IDF is facing a manpower shortage of 20,000 soldiers, he says. Quote, there are only two options: to draft our Haredi brothers so that they shoulder their share, or to impose on our reservists another 120 reserve days every year on a permanent basis, destroying their professional and family future. But it says, right now, there are about 100,000 young Haredi men obligated to enlist who can be trained within 5 months to the level required for the mission. It is possible, and the IDF is capable of it, but it needs government backing. Yet the government, instead of acting to draft the Haredim, is doing exactly the opposite. These days, it is advancing a law that will eliminate any chance of drafting Haredim. Some 80,000 ultra-Orthodox men aged between 18 and 24 are currently believed to be eligible for military service, but have not enlisted. The IDF has said it urgently needs 12,000 recruits due to the strain on standing and reserve forces caused by the war against Hamas in Gaza and other military challenges. According to Bennett, the bill currently being promoted by the coalition is not a draft law, but rather a bluff full of formulations and tricks meant to mislead you, the public, into thinking the goal is to draft Haredim, but in practice, every component of the law ensures they will not enlist. For example, the law grants an immediate pardon to all draft evaders, a reward for evasion. It also states that a young Haredi who delays until age 26 will receive a lifetime exemption. Obviously, everyone will do that, he continues. The law is full of such deceptions. That is why the IDF opposes it. That is why former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant opposed it and was fired. That is why the chair of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, Yuli Edelstein, opposed it and was removed. Every professional body that examined the law determined it is a bluff. The only reason why Netanyahu is promoting the controversial legislation is that the Haredi parties are threatening to topple the coalition, he argues, calling it politics in its purest form, pushing back on the Haredi claim that Torah cannot be combined with military service. Bennett cites the biblical passage in which Moses rebukes the tribes of Gad and Reuben by saying, shall your brothers go out to war while you sit here? Quote, all the heroes of the Torah were warriors. Joshua ben Nun, Gideon, King David, all were great fighters. Myriads of soldiers from the religious Zionist community proved themselves in this war in all their glory with a Gemara in hand and the heart of Khan Yunus. This is the true Judaism, he continues, calling on every citizen of Israel to stand together with the soldiers of the IDF against this anti-Zionist law. Yeah, okay. So that would, that would couple with this headline, which I actually laughed at when I saw it. And it's about, where is it? It's the one about the women. All right, so here's a headline from May 21st. Okay, so this is from May 21st. Lacking Haredi manpower, IDF turns to woman power. 1 in 5 fighters are now female. This is from May 21st. And they are openly admitting right here that the IDF is relying more and more on women because they can't get any of these 100,000 men from this religious, ultra-Orthodox religious group to agree to fight. Meanwhile, you also have, so this is from back in May. Now you have from yesterday this report that they are now going to start relying more on women to fill combat roles. Here it is. Sorry, these tabs are just a nightmare to chase down. So this is from yesterday. IDF faces manpower crisis as fewer soldiers keen on military career, new data shows. And this is a very different headline than the way that this blog looked when I looked at it a few hours ago. It says the Israel Defense Forces have been facing a major crisis in keeping career service members in the military, according to statistics aired Sunday, as Army officials continue to ring alarm bells about shortages among troops. According to Channel 12 News, the IDF is short of about 1,300 officers at the ranks of lieutenant and captain, and another 300 majors. But that's not the headline I'm looking for, because the headline I'm looking for is the one that says that they're going to start plugging women into combat roles. And I mean, the way that I read this earlier today was, I was laughing so hard because it's presenting it as like a woke triumph. It's like, oh, aren't we so much better? Like, we're better than everybody because we are using more women in combat roles. And it was like as if this was a good thing. This was a reflection on how strong Israeli society is. And my response to that was, any society that is, number one, in the state of perpetual warfare, but number two, sending its women out to man the ramparts as opposed to its men, when it has plenty of able-bodied men who can fight, the Haredim, that is a sign of a society in collapse, in my opinion. And I think that is exactly what we're witnessing here with Israel. When you're forcing your women out to combat roles, and I've seen the pictures of these women. These are like young looking women, right? And they're missing legs, they're missing arms, coming out of the hospital because of tour of duty in the IDF. And I mean, what a broken and backwards society that the women are going to war while the men stay at home. And you kind of have to ask Israel why, like, what is the point of all this, right? Are you actually fighting a war of survival, or is this a war of conquest? And I think it's very much a war of conquest. So let's pivot back, I guess, to Syria, because I don't see that. I don't know if they scrapped it, or if they just like rewrote the article, but I thought I had that pulled up. Okay, so back to Israel. The Attorney General to Prime Minister Ben-Gvir's repeated violations of police independence validate demands he be removed from office. This is from today. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir is reportedly violating the principle of police independence by unlawfully intervening in police investigations and appointments. Attorney General Gali Baharav Miara tells Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu something which she says she's provided a factual and legal foundation to petitions calling for his dismissal from office. Writing to the Prime Minister, Baharav Miara details a series of incidents in which the far-right minister has publicly spoken out about ongoing police investigations, intervened over police promotions on political grounds, and sought to determine operative police policies in violation of high court rulings. Quote, these are substantive violations repeated time and again in numerous contexts, which turn the law establishing the principle of police independence into a dead letter, writes the Attorney General. She says that in attempt to come into a mutually agreed framework with Ben-Gvir for ensuring police independence has failed, and that it is now impossible to defend police independence in the face of Ben-Gvir's repeated illegitimate interventions which harm the rule of law and human rights. The Attorney General adds that given this inability to halt the minister's political intervention in police work, the claims of petitioners asking the court to order Ben-Gvir's dismissal from office have become anchored in legal and factual framework. She says, therefore, that Netanyahu needs to address the issues she raises in her letter before she files a final response to the petitions on behalf of the state to the High Court. Ben-Gvir, in response, calls Baharav Miara a criminal, accusing her of obstructing justice in the investigation into the Sadi Tiaman video leak affair and of repeatedly trying to thwart the will of the government. I will not rest or be silent until her actions are investigated. Israel will not be a mafia state, says Ben-Gvir, and that is the epitome of the kettle calling the the pot black. When they're referring to that scandal, I think the scandal they're referring to is the lawyers from the IDF leaking those videos last year of the IDF soldiers gang raping those Palestinian prisoners. Ben-Gvir very angry about that. Remember, he led the people who like stormed the military bases and physically attacked the IDF soldiers, where these they put these guys in jail. Like the military police came and arrested the soldiers who gang raped these prisoners. They put him in jail, and then Ben-Gvir and all of his crazy followers showed up at the military base and were trying to like ram down the gate and free the prisoners. They were physically attacking the soldiers. Like I said, I mean, Israel has kind of become this just lawless anarchy, like state of anarchy, where it's like the law of the jungle. Might makes right, and only the strong survive. This woman, Baharav Miara, is the one who's been trying to investigate Netanyahu and his inner circle for potentially funding October 7th, because they were getting money from Qatar and then quietly giving it to families in Gaza to make sure the money got to Hamas. And, Ronan Bar, the head of formerly the head of the Shin Bet, he was fired by Netanyahu for doing this. And Baharav Miara tried to stop Netanyahu from firing Ronan Bar because he was investigating that too. And, she petitioned the court. She did all those things. Netanyahu then tried to fire Baharav Miara. She was able to, I think, successfully litigate to the court that because she was in the middle of investigating certain people in Netanyahu's government, it would have been a conflict of interest to fire her. However, Ronan Bar was also in the middle of investigating those people, and he was fired. So very ham-fisted. It's very much like the court will rule against Netanyahu, and then Netanyahu will just do it anyway. And he's like, what are you going to do about it? Like, you and what army? The people of Israel are going to support me. And it's a weird inversion, I think, from what we're seeing in America with Trump, because, Trump, I think, very much is facing this combative, subversive judiciary that is undermining him and telling him that he has to stop carrying out his executive duties in a very subversive way that they're doing this. It seems to me that, the judges, from what I can tell in Israel's case, are actually doing the opposite. They're trying to keep the cart on the rails, right? And be like, all right, well, these people are legitimately investigating claims of corruption around Netanyahu. Netanyahu's already been charged. You need to let them investigate. And Netanyahu is basically saying, no, I'm not going to let them investigate, and I'm going to stack the Supreme Court with more judges. This whole judicial overhaul, and so now, this whole Herzog thing, Netanyahu has requested a pardon. Purportedly, when he spoke to Trump on the phone, he talked to Trump about it again too, and said that he's going to be, that he wants Trump to press for the pardon as well. So here's the story on that. It says, without confession of guilt, Netanyahu's pardon request is a Hail Mary, experts say. As if the country were not already laboring enough under legal and constitutional crises, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu took Israel into a new minefield on Sunday when he filed a request to President Isaac Herzog asking for a pardon for the criminal charges against him in the 3 cases for which he is currently standing trial. In a brief personal letter to Herzog, Netanyahu made the case that bringing the trial to a close would benefit the public by ending national divisions over his prosecution. He then published a message pledging to heal the nation's divides should his trial be halted, but in the same breath inflamed the rift by arguing that not only is he innocent, but that he has been framed by the indictment against him, was concocted by hostile elements in law enforcement agencies. In the pardon application itself, his lawyers argued that it was in the public interest for the prime minister to focus on the challenges facing the country, implying but not stating explicitly that the trial has taken up too much of Netanyahu's time. Undercutting the argument was the fact that the same legal team had claimed years earlier that juggling both the trial and the affairs of state was not a problem. Yet it is unlikely that either the possibly disingenuous appeal to unity or concerns about legal sophistry will be decisive in Herzog's decision regarding the request, even if they play a factor. Rather, experts say it is Netanyahu's glaring omission of an admission of guilt or wrongdoing that puts his request on legally shaky ground, making it highly unlikely the president will grant him an outright pass and inviting the possibility of court intervention if he does. Such a move would also create deep unrest in the country, warned Professor Yedidia Stern, head of the Jewish People Policy Institute, with the prime minister's opponents taking to the streets in protest and his supporters arguing that their claims of a deep state plot against Netanyahu and the Israeli right have been proved correct. Stern, a legal expert who has been appointed to numerous public professional committees in the past, noted that Netanyahu's lawyers already know it is improbable that Herzog would issue an outright pardon under the circumstances and likely see the pardon request as the beginning of some kind of negotiation process. He speculated that Herzog may be inclined to issue a conditional pardon requiring some form of admission of wrongdoing by Netanyahu, in which the specific language would be negotiated and a firm deadline for the end of his political career established. And so that is kind of become the key of like the legal analysis that I'm reading and that I've been reading into. One of the articles also, I think, quoting a former Netanyahu lawyer who also agreed that Netanyahu would need to confess to some level of guilt in order for the pardon to be considered legal. I suppose maybe that's Israeli law that they're referring to. It says, let's see, the law does not explicitly require the recipient of a pardon to have been convicted or condition a pardon for someone not convicted on them admitting their guilt. But the word quote unquote offender in the law is both crucial and logical. Several legal experts have asserted, since it makes little sense for an innocent person to request a pardon. I mean, the logic there is pretty straightforward. Quote, it's irrational to have a pardon before conviction. A pardon for what? Said Dana Blander, a research fellow at the Israel Democracy Institute. Usually, if people say they are innocent, they don't need to ask for a pardon. This exact concern was at the heart of legal arguments over the only real precedent for a presidential pardon before conviction in Israel, 1984's Bus 300 affair. Then President Chaim Herzog, President Isaac Herzog's grandfather, issued pardons to the head of the Shin Bet and 3 other Shin Bet officials for their role in the extrajudicial execution of 2 Palestinian terrorists who were captured alive after a deadly bus hijacking. Unlike in Netanyahu's case, those pardons were issued before the suspects were indicted. The legality of the pardons was challenged in the High Court of Justice, which ultimately upheld them, citing the admissions of guilt by those accused. So that's, I guess, what they're referring to is the one time that this has happened where you had a preemptive pardon. There was an admission of guilt with the pardon. The optics of Netanyahu admitting guilt to what he's done here, even though these crimes are kind of process crimes. I mean, they're not like, it's not like hardcore corruption. It's, accepting gifts, colluding with the media, or, attempting to collude with the media. I don't know if he actually succeeded in that. That's those are the type of crimes we're talking about here. Not, I'm sure there's stuff he could be indicted for after this that would be far more damning. So it says, what happens now? Netanyahu's pardon request has now been passed by the president's office to the Pardons Department and the Justice Ministry, which will seek the position of various state institutions on the request, including that of the state attorney's office, which prosecutes criminal trials, including Netanyahu's. It is also likely that the Attorney General Gali Baharav Miara will issue her own legal opinion, since she is the head of the prosecution services, and because the Attorney General has ultimate authority over the indictment of senior officials. The formal position of the Pardons Department is then passed to the Justice Minister, who also draws up a position paper, which is then passed to the President's legal advisor, who draws up their own position paper, which is then passed to the President himself. Holy crap, this is bureaucratic as hell. The process is likely to take several weeks, according to reported estimates. What I've seen is 2 months. I'm seeing that we won't hear anything for 2 months, which puts us at the end of January. So we'll see what happens with this, but I do think that we're going to see escalated conflict in southern Syria. I think we're going to see Russia come out and be working with Syria to defend Syria, just like they were before. They were defending Assad against ISIS, which is, NATO / Israel. And now we're going to see Russia back in Syria doing patrols. Here's an article. I can't remember if we went over this on Friday or not, but certainly went over this with Alpha on his show. Because they reported, I think it was, here it is, November 30th. Syria's new leaders keep Russia in play. Mediterranean presence is vital for Russia's military, and the new Damascus government knows it cannot steady the country without Moscow. Renegotiating the future of its two bases will not be easy. And so, this is getting into the 49-year agreement made with Damascus. But the other headline that... here we go. Russian troop visit to Syria, cementing control, preparing for a post-Assad phase. So you have the Russian military in Syria for the first time meeting with Syrian officials. It says Russia has signaled renewed efforts to reassert its influence in Syria following the military and political shifts after the ousting of Bashar al-Assad on November 16th, 2025. Syrian Defense Minister Mirhal Abu Khasra received a high-level Russian military delegation in Damascus to discuss ways to strengthen military cooperation between the two states. The Syrian Ministry of Defense announced. And then right after this story is published, you have this story. I think this was November 18th. Russia proposes deploying its military patrols in southern Syria. So I think this probably has already happened, is my guess, and we're just kind of hearing about it long after the fact. But that I think this is going to come to an head. We're going to see Russia / Turkey together, which is NATO and Russia fighting Israel in southern Syria, and I think that's going to be. I think we're going to see Trump and Putin come together over Ukraine, make peace, have their bromance, and then in order to really solidify their bond, their friendship, and this new alliance between Russia and the United States, they need a common enemy they have to defeat. And I think the common enemy is Israel. I think that's how this all plays out. There was a post that I thought was interesting that might be worth looking at. Maybe not. This guy, Amit Segal. The reason I thought this was interesting is because he's looking at things from, like, I don't know who this guy is. I just saw this post and thought it was an interesting post. Here it is. Here it is. Okay, I thought for some reason I remembered this as a Times of Israel article. This is actually where I saw it. The IDF is witnessing an astonishing jump in the number of. This isn't the post I want to look at, but we'll look at this real quick. The astonishing jump in the number of girls entering combat roles. My M12 News colleagues accompanied girls to the draft day at an IDF enlistment center and left with an astonishing takeaway. The Army is recruiting more girls in the combat than it planned for. Here's some IDF data from this past summer's recruitment cycle. Israel Border Police recruited 104% of the girls it planned for, and the Combat Intelligence Collection Corps, the number was 109%. It was 113% in the Border Defense Corps. Search and Rescue recruited 121% of the girls it was expecting. And the Artillery Corps, that number was 137%. Okay, so what does this practically mean? As Iron Zaid put it in artillery, quote, for every 3 girls who plan to enlist into combat, an additional soldier joined them. Don't forget, unlike boys with high enough medical profiles, Israeli girls are automatically exempt from combat roles in the army, and yet, inspired from the past 2 years of war, these girls are rushing to defend their homeland in ways the country has never seen before. Israel kids aren't just all right. They're an inspiration for us all. Yeah, see, this is the wrong read on this. I think these girls are probably being coerced into doing this, is my guess. And if they aren't being coerced, then it says a lot that they feel like they have to do this without like while there are able-bodied men running around who could certainly fight. All right, this is the post I wanted to look at real quick, and then we'll shut it down. This is from today, actually. It looks like he posted this. It says, Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu are playing games with us once again. Yesterday, the president publicly warned Israel's prime minister not to, quote, interfere with Syria's evolution into a prosperous state, end quote. His officials, meanwhile, are leaking to reporters that, quote, Bibi is seeing ghosts everywhere, and that if he doesn't stop the IDF strikes in Syria, he will self-destruct. And then Trump invited Netanyahu to the White House. What's going on here? So, like, his premise here is that the invitation to come to the White House is a sign that Trump loves Netanyahu and that it's going to be a friendly social visit. That's what he's purporting here. I think we all saw the last Netanyahu visit. It can be a very cold and callous visit, like to the principal's office. As always, the conventional wisdom in legacy media is simple. Washington is being forced to rein in a reckless Jerusalem before it causes irreversible damage in the Middle East. I mean, yeah, pretty much. But as I've said time and time again, surface level appearances are often deceiving. And when officials leak exciting tidbits to journalists, there's always an unspoken agenda behind the leak. If you ask me, far from Trump trying to calm down Israel's oppositions in the region, I believe he and Netanyahu are coordinating a specific security development. While it's hard to say exactly what, if I had to guess, my money would be on Netanyahu trying to get American permission for a significant operation in Iran, Syria, or Lebanon. Don't forget, according to Saudi outlet Al-Hadath, the United States recently warned Iraq of an imminent Israeli operation against Hezbollah, which would continue until the group's disarmament. And it came with an American warning on the side: Israel will hit Iraq hard if its pro-Iranian and militias intervene. Okay, so what is that operation? Okay, so is that the operation? I can't say for sure, but this much is clear. Netanyahu and Trump are cooking something up on the military front, and they're keeping us in the dark. So see, like, this guy is evaluating it from the other side. That, like, Netanyahu's the good guy, Trump's the good guy. They're working together, and how are they going to go kill more Muslims in the Middle East? How are they going to convince the public that this is all okay? And it's actually quite the opposite. I think the one thing standing in the way of peace right now is everything that Bibi Netanyahu represents, which is an entire political ideology and movement inside of Israel. He just happens to be the figurehead for it at this moment in time. All right. So with that said, we're going to shut things down, hit some rants and some boosts. Hit the thumbs up if you are still out there listening. Appreciate y'all being here. Let's see what we have in terms of boosts and rants. Keith O'Higgins, Ghost, what's your view on Pat Burns' claim that Netanyahu was battling the Israeli deep state on October 7th, 2022? The Hamasakost stand down. Could the same Israeli deep state be working with Maduro? See, I see it totally differently. I see it as Netanyahu is the deep state. Like, and if you look at it through that framing, I mean, Netanyahu and Maduro are enemies. Maduro has been very clear that he views Netanyahu as a malevolent figure in the world. And if you view it that way, that Netanyahu is the deep state and that Netanyahu did allow October 7th to happen for reasons that should be pretty obvious by now, then yeah, I mean, once you accept that framing and look at it from that perspective, everything kind of makes a lot more sense. It's just that Netanyahu is presenting himself as the Trump figure in Israel. How can that be the case when he's been in politics since 1988? He's been the Israeli prime minister off and on since 1996. You know, I mean, he's been in office, in the prime minister's office, since Clinton was president. That's how long this guy's been around. And he's also overseen everything that's happened in the Middle East since before 9/11, you know? So, I mean, I've beaten that horse dead as why I think Netanyahu's the bad guy, but appreciate the rant, Keith. And we have to keep our eyes, our minds open to all possibilities. But, you know, I view the idea of Netanyahu being exonerated and like coming around and becoming quote unquote like a redeemed bad guy, right? I see, if you're going to do that for Netanyahu, you have to do it for Hillary Clinton. You have to do it for Barack Obama. You have to do it for Bill Gates. You have to do it for all these people who've done these terrible things. Why not, redeem all of them? Why not bring all of them back? Now, maybe Netanyahu is being controlled, and maybe he is being, he's our boy Yuhu. I certainly am open to that. But the idea that he is like earnestly the savior of Israel and he's like the good guy, I just think that if you believe that, you probably also believe that Russia is the bad guy, Putin is evil, and that Netanyahu and Trump are going to team up against Putin and ride off into the sunset, which I think is very unlikely to happen. All right, let's see if we have any boosts. I think we're good there. All right, guys. Well, hit the thumbs up, like I said, and we will be back on Friday with another episode of Geopolitics with Ghost. Tomorrow, Breaking History, we will do with Matt. So tune in for that. I think Matt has a guest lined up. I gotta verify that with him. And then the choice, of course, Thursday at noon Eastern. So lots of good content coming out. If y'all would, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you come Friday. All right, y'all have a great day. Geopolitics with Ghost, we are out.
Bells will be ringing. The sad, sad news. Oh, what a Christmas to have the blues. My baby's gone. I have no friends who wish me greeting. Once again.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.